Donald Trump's new historically unpopular VP pick J.D. Vance is an opportunist, and these new leaked emails prove just that. Now, you guys have all heard J.D. Vance's story, his transformation from a never-Trumper to a Trump sycophant, his transformation from a tech bro that went to Yale to somebody that now rails against those same elite universities, his transformation from somebody who used to support his transgender friend to somebody who now strips rights away from that very same group. His old transgender friend actually just released new emails and did an exclusive interview detailing how J.D. Vance completely shifted what he believes and who he is in order to suck up to Donald Trump. Make sure you leave a like on the video. Let's dig in. I do miss him. Trans Michigan attorney mourns loss of J.D. Vance they knew at Yale. Sophia Nelson, born in Wayland, Michigan, is a public defender in Detroit, but the Allegan County native was a first-year law student out as trans when they met a young J.D. Vance during orientation at law school. Nelson felt lucky to win acceptance to Yale and always hoped to come home and work in the public interest. Nelson and Vance, also from a Midwestern working-class family, quickly became close friends. And before I break that down, let's break down the emails. Let's get down to the emails. Detroit lawyer, the person we were just talking about, Sophia Nelson. My friend, J.D. Vance, ditched beliefs for money and power. Michigan attorney releases trove of email communications with Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. In 2016 emails, Vance called Donald Trump, quote, morally reprehensible, criticized law enforcement, and expressed a belief in systemic racism. Sophia Nelson, who is transgender, said her friendship with Vance ended after he took office and introduced a youth gender reassignment ban. Let me say that Republicans, MAGA Republicans, would now cancel J.D. Vance if he expressed a belief in systemic racism. It sounds like I'm being overdramatic or being tongue-in-cheek, but genuinely, if J.D. Vance came out today and posted a video to Twitter of him saying, I think systemic racism is real and the liberals are right about that, I genuinely think the MAGA fan base would melt down and say this is a terrible VP, just for believing in systemic racism, something that is backed up by statistics from the FBI, statistics from the U.S. government. A Michigan attorney is stepping into the national spotlight by releasing personal emails that she says reveal the political opportunism of J.D. Vance, the Ohio Republican senator now serving as former President Donald Trump's running mate. Listening to his current rhetoric, quote, really broke my heart, Sophia Nelson told Bridge, Michigan on Sunday after first sharing the story of her broken friendship with Vance in the New York Times. Nelson, a progressive who grew up in Michigan but met Vance in Yale Law School in Connecticut, provided the Times and subsequently Bridge with years of emails and text messages between herself and Vance. Their emails document a political shift for Vance, a conservative but once strident critic of Trump. A month before Trump was elected in 2016, Vance called him, quote, such an effing disaster in an email to Nelson. He's just a bad man, Vance wrote at the time, a morally reprehensible human being. Those are some strong words for somebody who is now the vice president of that very same man. But it gets worse. It continues. Vance also expressed sympathy with the Black Lives Matter movement, indicated a belief in systemic racism, and expressed openness to the idea of universal basic income, positions generally opposed by Trump conservatives. Now, these are all great positions to have. They're actually all incredibly rational. Yes, black people are unfairly treated in a systemic manner, and J.D. Vance, I feel like deep down knows that, but will never admit it because it's not politically convenient for him. He told Nelson he saw impoverished inner city neighborhoods as, quote, the direct consequence of efforts to segregate and keep black people out. There's nothing about that should be controversial. You can draw a direct line from segregation, from Jim Crow laws, from all of these racist laws to poverty in inner city neighborhoods. There are so many studies showing this. You can just see the direct line between how it happens, and J.D. Vance seemed like he was at one point decently intelligent and saw that. He seemed like he was a liberal conservative, if you know what I mean. He was a conservative who was pro-gay, pro-trans rights, believed in systemic racism, but probably just liked conservative economics and hated the Trump brand of conservatism. But now he is full-throated MAGA, and that is the mind-blowing part. How does somebody change so much in so little time. Nelson and Vance had formed a friendship despite their ideological differences, which is fine. But Nelson, who is transgender, has said their friendship ended after he voiced support for a 2021 Arkansas ban on gender-affirming care for minors. He later sponsored similar national legislation. In an interview with Bridge, Nelson said they were motivated to share their experience with Vance so transgender youth can see, quote, these leaders who are attacking them aren't doing so because they're actually scared of them or think they're bad. They're doing so from a place of political opportunism, as I said at the beginning of this video. Nelson said she still cares, quote, a lot about Vance, but felt an obligation to expose what she has seen of his political transformation. Quote, the fact that Mr. Vance has turned his back on what I believe to be his core values in order to amass money and power is a reflection on his integrity and trustworthiness, Nelson told Bridge. I felt a duty to my community to give them information to be able to make an informed decision. That is honestly a really good quote. The first part of that quote is great, especially about people amassing money and power and sacrificing their core values. Nelson grew close to Vance as part of the same friend group at Yale and maintained correspondence with him for nearly a decade afterward. That group is mentioned in Vance's memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, which refers to Nelson as, quote, an extremely progressive lesbian. In emails, Vance and Nelson referred to one another affectionately and openly stated their takes on current events. At one point, they mulled creating a podcast. Quote, I think you're my only really liberal friend with whom I openly talk politics on a deeper sense, Vance wrote to her in 2015. The next year, she told him, quote, what I value in you is your genuineness, curiosity, kindness, and desire to make a difference. She called him a true friend. It's honestly kind of sad that people can part ways and completely go in different directions and end up wanting to destroy the other's lives, in the case of JD Vance trying to strip healthcare away from Nelson. It's kind of wild. Since then, however, Nelson said her opinion has changed. Quote, the way he talks about people without children, about trans people, about immigrants, I don't think is reflective of the basic respect that those of us who grew up in the Rust Belt treat our neighbors with, Nelson said. And that is true. I mean, I grew up in Indiana. I've been in and out of the Rust Belt my entire life. Some incredibly nice, genuine people living in the Rust Belt, and the Trump movement isn't reflective of how people used to act. The Trump-Vance campaign did not immediately respond to requests for comment by Bridge, Michigan. Quote, Senator Vance values his friendships with individuals across the political spectrum, Schroeder said, who is a Vance spokesperson. And here's a one-on-one interview with Nelson. What was your first impression of him, they ask. Nelson responds, I really liked JD. I still care for him and his wife, Usha. Obviously, I'm heartbroken by the transformation that they've decided to undergo. The JD that I got to know in law school, and it's reflected in our correspondence after law school, was thoughtful and compassionate. We obviously didn't share common politics, but growing up in Wayland, Michigan, it was nothing new to me to develop friendships and respect across the political divide. They ask, in excerpts of your conversation, what struck me was two people really trying to understand each other's perspective, which is so rare these days. And Nelson responds, I think that's really important. One of the things that I think JD has been right about is, and he's not the only one to say these things, is to dismiss anyone who's voted for Trump as stupid or racist. I actually agree. I don't think everybody who voted for Trump should be written off. I talk about this in my videos all the time. Many of them are nice people. I certainly think that Trump is advancing a racist and dangerous agenda, but there are real concerns among Trump's voters, many of whom I grew up with, that I don't believe that the Trump-Vance ticket is doing anything meaningful on a policy front to address, which is true. These people are being tricked into voting against their own interests, and Donald Trump plays to their greatest fears about losing their wealth and takes advantage of them. The Democratic Party does need to take seriously the concerns of working class Rust Belt voters, and I take those concerns seriously and I serve those constituents. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, comment a blue heart, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you think about JD Vance's transformation. I love to hear from you guys. It means a lot to me every time you guys comment and interact with each other in the comment section. We are building an amazing community here, and I love to have you guys with me. Make sure you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.